Hey everyone, this is Amber Key, and you're listening to a Bright Idea podcast, a show where I sit down with entrepreneurs to discuss the aha moments that launched their businesses. On this week's episode, I sat down with Justin Shiels, a creative futurist, author, and founder of SoCurious. He creates joy-centered art, analog experiences, and creative practices rooted in self-love and nervous system care. His work helps people slow down, feel safe, and reconnect with what it means to be a human in a digital world. In this episode, Justin shares how he went from being a creative director, a profession he decided on when he was just 8 years old, to the founder of SoCurious, where he emphasizes authenticity, community building, and the power of joy in business. We discuss practical strategies for launching a creative business, the importance of iteration, and how to stay true to your purpose amid challenges. Before we dive in, if you like what we're doing here at A Bright Idea, help us keep going. You can subscribe to this show to get notifications when new episodes drop. If you like what you hear, share this episode with someone who needs a little inspiration. And if you would like to support our show directly, you can donate to our Cash App at A Bright Idea Podcast. Lastly, if you're a business owner or a brand looking to connect with our growing audience, we'd love to collaborate with you. You can sponsor an ad within one of our episodes or sponsor an entire episode. Just reach out to us to learn more. Now let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Justin Shiels, founder of SoCurious. Justin from SoCurious Greeting Cards, how are you today?
I am so good. How are you doing, Amber?
I'm doing well. I have been really looking forward to this interview since I saw you on Instagram a while ago, and you and I spoke before this call, and I just found that we have so much in common. We're both artists. We worked in the advertising industry. You're an entrepreneur. You left corporate America. Like, there's so many layers to your story, and so I'm really excited to get into it and learn more about you. But most importantly, I'm excited for my listeners to hear your story too.
Yeah, I'm excited about this as well. Let's do it.
That's awesome. Okay, so before we get started, what I like to do is play a rapid fire to learn a little bit more about you before we get into your background. Do you want to play with me?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's go. All right, so what's one word to describe your brand?
Joyful.
Okay, I love that. A small moment recently that brought you joy.
Oh, wow. I just did Neurodivergent Expo this past weekend. I did a pop-up and then I was able to give a presentation at the conference.
Oh,
And
cool.
genuinely, that experience just like lit my soul on fire. One, because I was able to connect with the local community, but then I have ADHD, so I was able to connect with a sub community that I'm a part of directly. So it just like perfect experience for me. Like 10 of 10 would recommend. It was so good.
Wait, that's awesome. So I want to talk to you about that for a little bit. Was that part of your business, or were you speaking about ADHD as like another entity?
Yeah, it was a part of my business. And so I was on the planning committee for Neurodivergent Conference this year. Super happy to have that opportunity. Essentially, what our goal is to bring together people that have ADHD, autism, dyslexia, or any other form of neurodivergence together into a conference and connect with like-minded people and then see speakers connected to that, as well as have all these awesome like kind of extracurricular activities tied to it.
That's so
So
dope.
super fun experience. It was so cool. But then this year, for the first time ever, we did the Neurodivergent Expo. So this is open to the full public, not just the conference attendees.
Yeah.
And we did a Joy is the Revolution pop up. My company, So Curious, did,
Yeah.
which was super fun. We had incredible music playing, and then people had the opportunity to hand color some of the artwork that I created. And so a free experience, but then also I did a pop up with the brand where people could buy art prints or postcards or my book, the Reset Workbook. So it was just like, literally the perfect experience at the expo. And then that Sunday, the following day, I spoke at the conference with a new presentation that I have called the Joy Reset, helping people figure out how to build their own Joy Reset curriculum.
Mm.
And so it was just like I got to be all of me fully in this experience.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
I think you're the perfect guest to have on this show because as an artist and as someone who has a greeting cards business and it started off as greeting cards, what you just mentioned is like turning it into expos and then these like
Mm.
analog experiences and like really just like expanding what it means to have a brand. And so I just love that you've shared that and you're like tapping into different parts of yourself along the way. It's super cool. My next question kind of bleeds into that, but analog or digital and why?
Ooh, that's really tough for me, honestly. I think so much of my brand is about getting people off computer screens and living a more analog life,
Hmm.
but I genuinely am a digital person too. So I have to cheat and say both.
Okay. Good answer. That's a safe answer. My next question is a belief you had about success that you no longer agree with.
Ooh.
Am I stumping you on these with these
This
questions?
one is a hard one. I think one of my limiting beliefs that I had to let go of genuinely is that people that are exceptionally wealthy have done bad things to get there. I see myself as a good person and I believe that I will continue to have more and more success. And so I had to like literally evaluate that false belief that I had and rewrite it for myself. Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good one. How did you overcome that?
I think I'll be honest, I've not seen many examples of high integrity, kind human beings that have been successful.
Hmm.
But now I have seen enough of them that I know that it is possible to happen. And I've heard their stories enough where I see directly that it comes a little bit slower, sometimes even later in life for people. But it is very possible to like live within your own set of morals and ethics and achieve meaningful success in your industry.
I really love that. I think that also, we don't have a lot of examples, but why can't we be the example? Why can't we set that example? And I also feel that people that are extremely good, but also have a great deal of abundance, we don't always know about them.
Yes,
They're kind
true.
of the unsung heroes. It's like the people that we know that are super wealthy that aren't the best of people. They're loud and we know all about it. And that's sort of the example. So I really love that. That's super philosophical. Okay, my last question is if your brand had a theme song, what would it be?
Ooh. So that's actually a funny one. I used to be in a band when I was growing up.
Cool.
This was actually post college. I was in this band called Victorable. And we came out with one EP and I did like maybe 4 or 5 performances around New Orleans as a young person. And so I've been secretly working on a Joy is the Revolution anthem.
Let's
Um,
go.
it is not good yet, and so I'm not ready to share it, but like the anthem will be one that I create myself.
I love that. Multifaceted. And like people that are neurodivergent, I also am as well. And I just feel like there's just so many like layers and aspects to everything that we can do and achieve and all the interests. And I just love that you're like pouring into all of it. That's
Yeah.
really, really cool.
I knew very early on what I was interested in and what I loved making as an artist and a creative person.
I want to get into your background a little bit. When you and I were talking earlier, one thing that I really loved is that you are an artist and that you had this path of being an artist and then becoming a creative director, which is more like managing a team of people, making decisions behind campaigns and marketing. It kind of takes away the creative piece a little bit, but I want to get into the creative part of you. So I want to take a step back and go back to your time as an artist. Do you remember your first introduction to art?
Oh, absolutely. I started drawing because of my older sister, Nisha. In church, we would always draw like these little fashion illustrations. That was like kind of our connection point during my very, very early days. And so like I remember being 3 or 4 years old and drawing these little illustrations with her. And from there, I just continued to be a creative little human being. I always loved visual art, but I was able to get a computer when I was in the seventh grade. And for context, it's like so weird talking about it because like I grew up not having a computer. Like I remember having to type things on a typewriter as a kid.
That's so
Um,
cool.
and then we got the computer in the seventh grade, and I got Photoshop, Adobe's Photoshop, at a very young age, and was doing graphic design without knowing what graphic design was. Um, Fully fell in love with like making campaign posters for people's elections. I had my own like little newsletter at the time called Iconoclastic,
Mm.
digitally. And then for the high school, every once in a while, I would like print this little, like either it was a comic or like a small paper. And so I have been the same person from the very beginning. It was like I knew very early on what I was interested in and what I loved making as an artist and a creative person.
Were you self-taught in Photoshop?
Yeah, 100% self-taught. I definitely followed tutorials, I'm sure, during that time period, but it was me in my bedroom, like reading articles on websites in order to learn how to do things. Or I think there was this like Photoshop for Dummies book that one
Yeah.
of my mentors got for me, that was also useful during that time period.
I love that. As I went to an art school from 6th to 12th grade, and my
Nice.
major was visual art. So we had 8 different studios that we took. We took 2 studios per quarter. One
Yeah.
of them was digital media, and that's where we did all of our Photoshop and stuff. It was, oh my God, it was the best school. And I found that Photoshop was actually not my strongest suit. I was better at like ceramics and sculpture and doing things that were very like tactile with my hands. And I always envied the kids that were so good at Photoshop that could put pieces together and compositions together and layers. Like my brain just did not think that way. So that's super fascinating that you not only were exposed to that, but sort of like taught yourself Photoshop before. Like, I mean, nowadays everyone uses Photoshop, but like back then it was sort of like a very niche thing that very little people had a skill set for.
Definitely true. Yeah.
That's super cool. So, did you always want to be an artist?
Tricky. I actually always wanted to be a creative director in advertising. I was around 8 years old when I made that decision.
Who?
There,
How? Wait, I need to know. Like, I only found out what a creative director was like 5 years ago. So, like, tell me the story on how you knew that at
so
8.
I mean, I'll be honest. It's interesting how when you're a little kid, you know who you are at your core. I think everybody does know this. And then, life happens and it kind of can throw us off path or like lead us into different directions. But when I was 8, I saw the movie Boomerang with Eddie Murphy. And this is one of those clear stories where like representation matters. I saw Eddie Murphy playing a creative director at an all black ad agency. And I was like, one, I'm going to work in advertising. Two, I'm going to be a creative director. I remember literally imagining my life as a child and going, okay, I'm going to live in a high rise apartment. I'm going to be able to help make commercials that go on television. And I literally built my life around achieving that goal. Now, it's
Mm.
interesting because I took a few, like, I would say strange departures from that goal, but
Hmm.
ultimately I became a creative director by the time I was 30, which was the goal that I had as an 8-year-old child.
Mm. Would 8-year-old you looking back be proud of where that you thought about being a creative director at such a young age and that's what you became at 30?
I definitely think so. I think it's interesting because as you become older, you wrestle with what does it mean to get what you desire.
Mm.
That's like one of the most interesting questions that I think many, especially millennials, are kind of navigating in this kind of framework. Because you set this goal as an 8-year-old to become a creative director, and then you become a creative director, and it has all of these beautiful, awesome opportunities tied to it, right? But then it also has all of these unexpected challenges, all these things that you never would have imagined were a part of the job.
Yeah.
And for me, it was so interesting because, as you mentioned earlier, as a creative director, you're not actually doing creative work primarily. The responsibility is being a mentor to your team, it's selling ideas to your customers, and then it's also sometimes leading video and photo shoots, right? And so there were these moments where I felt like, yes, I am able to fully lean into my creativity. But then there are these other moments where it's like I'm sitting in these awkward, terrible meetings. I'm like navigating books, looking at spreadsheets in order to understand the numbers of my department. And then
Yeah.
I'm making these like really challenging decisions where you're like either firing or hiring. And it's just like it's challenging in these ways that I did not imagine initially. Now, the gift of the position is that as a creative director, and especially at the agencies that I primarily worked at, I had the opportunity to have like a lot of flexibility and freedom and learn how to be a business owner through
Yeah.
that process, which was a gift. Like I worked at smaller agencies, and so I was exposed to like more of running my own P&L, for example. Had I worked at these kind of larger agencies, I would have been insulated from that process and probably not have had the skills necessary to start my own business.
I love that, and I think that so many people can identify with that working in corporate. Like, you do have these challenges, but what you're taught in this sort of
Mhm.
environment where you can like make mistakes on someone else's dime, or like, be put onto certain projects that give you a skill set that you wouldn't have known just coming out right out of school as an entrepreneur and never working for somebody else. I think that a lot of people can really resonate with that notion. I want to know though, when you started to see that shift, that was no longer, this is a role that you really chased after, and this is a role that you found purpose in initially. When did you feel out of alignment, and when did it turn toxic for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. So for me, I knew that, or let me say it differently. I always felt like there were two sides to my personality. One side of me was like this person that is taking care of my household and building a sustainable life for myself financially, right? And
Yeah.
so it very much felt like I have a stable career that I can invest in myself and build the life that I want. Outside of my career, though, and I like to say in the margins of my life, I always would do creative experiments and projects that lit my soul on fire, right?
Yeah.
And so I have been lucky enough to, primarily work a full time job for the majority of my career, but then
Hmm.
also be able to explore all of my interests. And so my path has been meandering and unique. And so, for example, I started as a graphic designer in advertising, and then I quit advertising to get my master's in arts administration. At the time, I had the idea of starting my own art gallery. And so I'm starting my arts administration career, and I am doing my first internship at an art gallery. And I was like, oh, wait, this is not the job for me,
Yeah.
because owning an art gallery is primarily just um, wooing exceptionally wealthy people in your community to buy art from specific people. So it's like
Mm.
creating narratives around it. And so while I was in that situation, I literally go to myself, wait, if running an art gallery is just sales and I am good at sales, I should get back into advertising and just be a creative director, which that's what I mean. It's like you go down all these paths and then you end up back where you started in the first place. And so it was interesting for me during that time period to invest my energy in learning sales, and specifically marketing and sales while I was getting my master's degree. And so instead of trying to find a job right out of finishing that degree, I actually started my own design studio and ended up running that for 3 years. And it was an incredible experience and like helped me to learn how to work directly with clients and customers. And then also to like kind of start leading a team. I had like a few consulting, you know, either a web designer or an illustrator or a copywriter that I work with on projects. And so I was
Yeah.
like kind of learning how to lead in those positions. But then I went through a breakup, right? And all the most interesting stories start with the breakup. And I was like, oh no, I can't do this anymore, right? Like I'm running my own business and like navigating the emotions tied to this relationship ending. It's too much to bear at one time. And
Mm.
so I it's so crazy. I go to this coffee shop near my house and I run into one of my colleagues from undergrad and I'm like, yeah, I've been running this business and I think it's time to end it. And she goes, I think I know the job for you. She was creative director at a small social media agency in New Orleans. And I was like, y'all can't be hiring. Like, that doesn't make sense. But little did I know, she was moving to a new city and recommended me for the position. And so that's how I like kind of fell into being a creative director after like going down this very meandering path.
That's interesting. I feel like after a breakup, yeah, things always change after a breakup. You either like dye your hair or you get a new job.
Yes, yes.
For me, I just went blonde. It was a bad decision, but I'm glad that you found a job from yours. No, that's so funny. But when did you realize, though, once you got this job as a creative director at a small agency, like what was the exact moment where you realized I don't think I can do this anymore?
Yeah. So we're gonna fast forward a lot into the future. And it's in true Justin form, it cannot be a short story because so many things happened to me. And so I very happily worked as a creative director in advertising for about 5 years.
Mm.
And through that process, I saved a lot of money and was like, I'm going to try again. I'm going to quit my full time job and I'm going to build a new life for myself. And I had just gotten a book deal with Spruce Books, a subsidiary of Penguin Random House, to republish a self published title called The Reset Workbook. And so during the process of writing this book, I'm like kind of building my reality. So I launched my company, SoCurious. I'm working on the book deal, and then I am doing my first kind of group coaching program. So I was like, it was literally a rough draft test of my dream life. The year is 2022, and it's wild. I go to a routine visit to my doctor, and it was interesting. My normal doctor was out that week on vacation, and so they had moved me over to a new doctor. And lo and behold, I find out through that I have an anomaly in my blood work, and she's concerned that I might have cancer. This kind of led me down a 2 year path of kind of not knowing if I had cancer or not. And initially, when I got the news, I just ignored it. Right? I was like, I'm stepping into the reality that I desire. And I have this book deal. It's like I'm finishing this book no matter what. Nothing will throw me off that path.
Right.
And so around 6 months pass, and I go back in to get additional blood work, and then I'm referred to an oncologist. And so that's when I was like, "Oh shucks, this I'm going to take it seriously now. Let me find a job." And so I find what I think is my dream job, another creative director in advertising position, but this time it's focused on social good. So I'm like working on the coolest things for my unique brain. I am focused on mental health. I do sexual wellness and I do opioid prevention in teenagers. So it's like
Wow.
three categories that are really interesting to me. This is also kind of my second opportunity in my career to do commercials that will actually be on TV. So I'm working with directors and production teams to like do literal TV commercials, which I had not been able to do many times in my career. And so on paper, this should be the dream job. And it's so wild. It was the most toxic workplace that I have ever worked at in my entire life. And it's wild because the clients were so friendly. So many of my coworkers were so nice, like good, generous, down to earth people. But there was this top down, just negativity in the culture, where it just felt like creativity was not respected. Just allowing people to like use their own rational brains to come up with good decisions. It just was unlike anywhere I had ever worked before. And so I'm working this toxic job while I'm in the midst of a cancer scare, right? And so it's like, I can't leave. Rent is due on the first. It's always due on the first.
Rent is due always. The world is ending, but on the first you pay your rent.
Yes. And so I'm trapped, right? It's like I'm trapped in this job until I figure out what's going on. And I started having panic attacks, right? And so I have worked in this industry for nearly 15 years at this point. I've never had a panic attack about work because I've always worked at these really great places where people treat me kindly, and like it's like they give me the freedom to do the things that they know that I can do, which is like make good advertising campaigns for companies. But here I would go into reviews and I was so nervous that like they would rip the work apart, or that like one of my team members would start crying and I'd need to console them. And so it was just like,
Wow.
it was a stressful situation. So I'm in Richmond, Virginia for a video shoot for one of our clients. And I'm sitting there in the hotel reviewing the shot list. This is going to be my first time directing as well. So I'm like super excited. We're doing 13 commercial spots, but I'm also like, I genuinely don't know what the review process, the internal review process will look like for this commercial shoot. And I like suddenly feel as though I can't breathe. I'm like clutching my chest. Like I literally think I am having a heart attack, but in actuality, I'm having my second panic attack due to my fears associated with sharing my work with my peers at work, which is just
Yep.
insane to me. And so I'm able to make it through that panic attack, and ultimately the shoot goes relatively well. We're able to successfully complete all the work. But for me, I was like, this is the last straw. I refuse to have a third panic attack working at this place. And thankfully, like literally thankfully, 1 week later, I get a call from my oncologist, and they're like, okay, we've reviewed this enough. We've gone through enough rounds of tests. You don't have cancer. We know what's going on, but it's nothing to worry about. You're fine, essentially. And so I finally have permission to quit the job. Now, it takes me still 3 months ultimately to end my position at that workplace, but eventually I decided to quit. And it was a scary, challenging decision. It was
Yeah.
terrifying because one, I'm burnt out. Two, I like am essentially in a state of fight or flight, right? Like I have been put in the most toxic environment. And so I've like lost my confidence. I don't trust myself anymore. And I know that if I stay here any longer, it could potentially have long-term ramifications on my health. And so I go, I've got $25,000 in this bank account saved. I am going to quit, and I'm going to take 6 months and figure out how to get back to my normal self. Not I'm going to start a business. It's literally I'm going to take care of myself to make sure that I can continue to survive.
In listening to you share your story, first of all, I just love that you took us down that path and really gave us the real deal of what you were experiencing. And part of this is like why I said earlier that I was so excited to talk to you, because there's so many levels of like familiarity in your story that I feel. My previous job before the one that I have now, I was a marketing producer for a TV station. And so I was in the creative services department, and I created the promos, I wrote, I shot like campaigns, all of the things that you had experienced, and it was the most toxic work environment. And the projects that we were doing were so impactful and just so good, but behind the scenes working with a team, and people were undermining each other. People wanted promotions that weren't getting promotions, so they were like sabotaging the people that were doing that. It was insane. So listening to your story, I'm like feeling like the PTSD, like my heart was like racing. I was like, oh my God, that's all too familiar. So I understand at the point where you were like, I can't do this anymore. You took the $25,000 and you left not to initially like start your business, but to reset your nervous system. Like that is real. So what did that first month look like for you?
Oh, wow. I feel like during that time period, I had three major priorities. One, it was like I could not get enough sleep. It genuinely felt like I was awake for maybe, 8 hours a day, and the rest of the time I'm just like kind of sleeping. It was like I was repairing essentially. When I was awake, my primary focus was like deep cleaning my house. That felt really important to me during that time period. And then the second thing that was really important to me was taking these really long, meandering walks through my neighborhood and the parks and trails nearby to my house. I just was like really focused on like being in the sun, walking through things, and then making sure that my house was as clean as possible.
You mentioned when we spoke earlier that you didn't start your business right off the bat. You said you took some time to just reset, like you're mentioning here, cleaning your house, making sure that your mind and your space was decluttered. But you also talked a little bit about some fears that you had initially, and that you had some fears that almost stopped you from taking the leap. Do you remember that? And can you kind of go down that path too of what were some of those fears you were experiencing?
I think in many ways, I felt that being an artist was not a legitimate way to make a full-time living. And I think part of that was tied to kind of preconditioning from the world, this idea of the starving artist, focus and intention on serving clients seemed very easy to do. Like that made sense in my brain as a career choice, but actually being paid to be yourself seemed like an unrealistic opportunity for running a business. And I think what's really profound for me personally is that I have been forced essentially to become my most authentic self, like through that past experience.
Yeah.
And in that process of becoming my most authentic self, I have learned to publicly share aspects of myself online, like via social media. And
Yeah.
through that process, it has funded me being able to make a full-time living as a working artist and writer. And it's like I'm creative and I'm pushing boundaries and like breaking rules in regards to how people are working artists in the world in some ways. But it is so interesting that like the amalgamation of experiences that I had in my life along the way have led to the opportunity for me to use those skills, and I get paid to do it. And it has worked for several years. And so it's like, it's interesting and sometimes confusing how we are taught to make money and then how things are shifting culturally, even in these strange and unprecedented times.
When we return, the aha moment that launched SoCurious.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. I want to get into the aha moment that launched your business. And I want to talk about how when you started showing up as your authentic self online and kind of change that mindset of you're not a starving artist, but that there are ways that in which you can make this a full-time thing and make it lucrative while still being true to yourself. Talk, take me through like that moment and then how you launched your business.
Yeah. So I had actually launched SoCurious in 2022 initially with my first product, Joy Bombs affirmation cards. And they have done relatively successfully. I was able to sell 1,000 of those over the past several years. And so very, very proud of that, honestly. Um, but when I relaunched the business, it was very much tied to the election results of November 2024. And so I had kind of gone through a great majority of my healing process and was kind of getting back to myself and started a social media campaign specifically around this idea that America deserves a woman president. And so I started my social media campaign tied to the election. And then in November, when the results come out, I, like many of my peers, were confused and disappointed. And I had already been using this phrase, joy is the revolution, but suddenly those words had a new meaning, an unexpected meaning tied to where we were collectively in the United States. And so I do a series of emails to my email list where I'm kind of publicly processing, but also trying to provide encouragement and support to people that felt the way that I did. And so I think I sent about 12 emails, 12 days in a row, which
Yeah.
is wild. Many of them pretty long form, where I'm just encouraging people to like allow yourself to grieve, but also to stay focused on your own joy as much as possible, because we're in for another 4 years of kind of chaos and confusion. And from my perspective, the best way to deal with chaos and confusion is to focus on your joy.
Yeah. I feel like that's very experimental for a brand. I think that, you were playing off of what you were experiencing in real time, what this country was experiencing in real time, and really tapping into this idea that kind of turned into a mission. What was the feedback that you were receiving from your customers?
Yeah, it was fantastic feedback. I think what I loved about it was so many people just replied to the emails like, thank you. Thank you for saying these things. Thank you for sharing your philosophy around joy. And I wrote 10 reasons why joy is the revolution. That's one of my most popular social media posts, but then articles tied to this time period in my life. And so as I came to understand my own personal philosophy around joy and started sharing it with the world, I started to kind of continually get more and more people encouraging me to do new projects. So, for example, someone was like, "You have to turn this into a book." I was like, a book takes so long to do, and it feels like this is a topical moment." And I kind of thought to myself, I think I want to throw an art show, but I was worried, right? I'd never done my own solo art show. I didn't know how to do this. And I go get coffee with my friend here in Austin, Texas. Her name is Kamari. She's the founder of Mama's Kitchen Press. And I'm talking with her, and she's like, Justin, just throw the art show. Like, just do it. Like, you can do it. And I don't know how this is possible, but I decide that I'm going to do the show in December. It's November now, and I'm like, I'm doing the show in December, and I find a space. I post on Threads, this awesome alternative to Twitter that many people have been using. And I just post a like silly post. It's like, "Hi, my name is Justin. I'm a visual artist in Austin, Texas, and I'd love to do my first solo show before the end of this year. It had like a video of me like kind of smiling and being silly, and then it had like 7 pictures of my artwork, and it kind of goes viral on Threads for me. Like thousands of people are liking, and hundreds of people are sharing it, and I get a few comments for places where I can host the show. And someone reaches out, and I'm able to host the event at a coffee shop that hadn't opened in the city yet. And so
Mm.
I find the venue, and I put together my Joy is the Revolution collection, as well as kind of the first iteration of art prints and greeting cards for this kind of new version of SoCurious living in this new world. And I'm able to produce the show. And I want to be frank, it was hell. It sucked. It was a terrible experience in every way. It was so bad personally. It's so funny because like publicly, like it's like it was great. It was a success. People came. I was
Yeah.
proud of that aspect, but like for my personal life, it just was like the worst. I lost friends. I
Over
was so
this
confused.
event?
Yes, like it was the most confusing experience of my life. And I think the learning point, honestly, was that when you step into alignment, everything that is out of alignment falls away. And I think that is what happened with my career. I think that's what happened with some of my personal relationships. But it genuinely was mind-boggling how me stepping into my purpose and path really, really challenged some people at their core, and caused them to act out in ways that were 100% unexpected. And so I like essentially go back into hermit mode, right? Like I'm like, I like am finally doing this thing that I feel strongly and passionately about, and it's just like I have hit a level of confusion by how so many people in my life just were not feeling it. Were not able
Were
to
they
be
they just
supportive.
weren't supportive.
Weren't
Were
able to
they,
be supportive, but also in some cases like tried to like block it, right? Like went out of their way to try to stop me from doing this thing that I was so passionate about.
why?
No idea. I Your guess is as good as mine. What I will say is that I learned a lot about how to set healthier boundaries in my relationships moving forward. I learned that when you living in your most authentic self ruffle someone's feathers, that is in your best interest to kind of allow that relationship to fade. But I learned that the hard way, right? Because there's some relationships you're like, you want to fight for them. And it was like, some relationships are not worth fighting for, unfortunately. And so it was it was a masterclass education in learning how to one, believe in myself, but then two, to continue fighting for what I believe in, regardless of what is going on around me.
Was that lonely for you?
In many ways, yes. It was a challenging moment, especially in losing some friendships that have been for a long time. But it also was clarifying because the people that were supportive, like the friends that showed up and like helped me in ways that I needed them during this time period, it was beautiful to have those experiences too. It's like interesting because like a lot of times, and I feel like I fall into this too, we have a negativity bias, right? And so I can look at that same situation now and go, I am so grateful to my friend Valerie here in Austin, who like stayed up with me late nights in order to like get this done and get it done beautifully and well.
Mm,
But then you have other people that like were causing chaos and confusion in my life. And it was like, I see those instances sometimes a little bit more.
yeah. I love that, and I think that's dichotomy of being an entrepreneur is that from the outside and your business could be thriving. I mean, finally you left this toxic work environment and you're creating something of your own, and you poured into yourself and really like took a chance on yourself, and you see it, like you see people online or fans of you, and you see that people are buying your products, but then on the other side of that, your personal life, all of a sudden people that you thought were for you are against you. And so that's I don't think that people that are and you don't even have to be an entrepreneur, but people that are really like building something or stepping into another side of themselves or trying to improve, we don't talk about that often as like the skin you have to shed in a way to get to the side, and how lonely that actually is. And I think that just tying it back to your greeting cards and your brand in general, I think that's what really drew me to your brand, is that your greeting cards, and we'll get into that in a second, like your hook on social media is it's about it not looking like Hallmark, and that these are not like your traditional greeting cards. I find that when I see your brand, that you kind of tap into the most human parts of life and things that people can really resonate with deep in their soul. So that's just like from my perspective, but I would love to know from your perspective, like how would you describe your greeting cards to someone who only knows traditional greeting cards or like the hallmarks of them, of the things?
Yeah, I think what's important about my greeting cards is that they connect people with real human emotions, right? And so I feel as though some greeting card companies, they kind of rely more on traditional platitudes. A lot of times their illustrations will reflect kind of exactly what you expect. And so what's unique about the SoCurious brand is that I am hand making everything myself. I'm writing it myself. I'm illustrating it myself. And it has my unique point of view. It's my art style is heavily it's just different. It's hand done, it's wobbly, it's imperfect intentionally. And I do that because I want to show that it's okay for us to be fully human and imperfect. And I think like it was funny at the speaking engagement for Neurodivergent, someone asked me like, you talk so much about joy, but how do you respond when someone says that we have also entered this kind of toxic positivity era? And my kind of answer to that is that I have been to hell and back in my personal life, and I choose joy every single day. And
Yes.
so I think the beauty of my personal philosophy is that not only have I lived it, but like I have lived it to such extremes that when people tell me what has happened in their lives, I can go, I might not have experienced exactly what you went through, but I've experienced something close to it, and I continue to choose joy despite the circumstances that I have experienced. And I feel like that is one of the beautiful things about these cards, is that you see real human personality that genuinely I think connects with people's hearts and minds.
Coming up, how Justin is building a community through SoCurious.
And I think that, yes, your products are tapping into that human emotion, everything that you just mentioned too. But what's cool and what kind of makes you stand out over other greeting cards and other brands is your community aspect and your pop-ups. And you're not just selling, but it's all about participation and bringing people together. Was that intentional?
Okay, so one of the things that I missed when I was telling you about my kind of grieving and resetting period after leaving that toxic job was there were three things that really helped me tap back into my joy personally. The first one of those is disco music. As a little kid, I loved driving around with my Aunt Shirley. She would listen to WDIA radio in Memphis, Tennessee, and they
Mm.
primarily would play music from the 70s and 80s. And disco music has just like a beautiful meaning for me. It sits very heavy in my heart. It makes me so happy. So disco music, coloring and coloring books, and then taking these long meandering walks. And so, in building my first Joy is the Revolution pop up, I knew I wanted to do something that allowed people to interact with the art. And so, what I did was I built, or I'm sorry, I designed these coloring pages influenced by the art that I had on the wall so that people
Mhm.
color it in their own way. And at the very first Joy is the Revolution is a hit. And so, when I um, went through my grieving process after that first experience, I knew that I wanted to do a second one because I was like, I don't want to leave that taste in my mouth for this experience. I have to do it one more time and just see what it feels like to do it the right way, you know?
Yeah.
And so I ended up working with a venue here in Austin called Future Front, Texas. Incredible organization run by Jane Harvey that focuses on women and LGBT audiences, creating accessible art. I love what they're doing in Austin, Texas. So thankful for what they're doing. But I am able to host the second Joyous Revolution there. And when I tell you it is night and day to the previous experience, it was like surrounded by love and support from friends in my community here in Austin. It goes off easily without a hitch. We're able to raise funds from my email list to throw the experience. But what made it special is we have disco music playing and people are able to color. And that's kind of the focus of the event, of this 2 day experience. My art is on the walls and people are walking through, and we have products available for sale as well. But the real draw is that you get to be a crafty person and hang out with like minded people in like a fun, inclusive experience. And it was so beautiful to see all of these different types of people interacting with each other, doing what kids do so beautifully, which is create.
Yes. Yes. I love that. It reminds me of that cliche saying like if you build it they will come. And
Yeah.
and so you built this community and the first one wasn't what you thought it was going to be, but the continue to push on, you now have this community of all these different types of people that are tapping into an experience they may have not experienced otherwise. I really, I love that. I want to get into, on a bright idea, we talk about your background, we talk about your story, but we also talk about the business growth and the strategy. So I want to talk about how you're operating this business. You talked about several aspects of your brand, and there's sort of like multiple streams of income. At your core, like what are your core revenue drivers? Would you say today?
Yeah, so we make money in a few different ways. The first is just through direct product sales on the site, like digitally. The second is pop-up events, and this is usually where I'm vending or I'm vending with my friend Rosa. She helps out with the business pretty frequently. The third is through the Joy is the Revolution pop-ups. These are parties that I create myself. And so they are a lot harder to plan, but they tend to make a lot more revenue. And then in addition to that, I have like kind of personal ways that I make revenue as well. And so I do coaching for entrepreneurs, especially creative entrepreneurs or
So
entrepreneurs with
cool.
ADHD. In addition to that, I have speaking engagements that I get paid to do. And I'm continually coming up with new ways to connect with my audience. And so SoCurious now has a mail club where people can subscribe monthly and kind of get prototypes of the things that will be coming to the shop in the future. And so that diversification of revenue streams is intentional, right? I want as many as possible, so long as it does not drive me crazy, so that I don't have to depend on one source of income too much. And essentially, not all of them are doing this all the time, but the goal is for each one of the revenue streams to make $1,500 a month. Because when I'm able to do that, it's like kind of no matter what happens, if one thing starts to fall, I can focus my intention on another part of the business. And
Mm.
so it is an intentional decision to kind of have a multi-pronged business, so that I can make sure that I'm sustainable for the long run.
So important, and something that so many entrepreneurs don't think about. If someone wanted to start a creative business today, like what would you tell them to focus on first?
Yeah, I think the first responsibility is getting one revenue stream up and running, right? That's always going to be your first priority as a new business, as a new entrepreneur. What I think happens is too frequently people stay in the planning and plotting phase.
Yeah.
And to be frank, you don't know how a business will run until it is running. And
Mm.
so I always recommend try to make the first dollars as quickly as possible, because that's how you actually learn from the project. So, for example, in 2023, I launched the first iteration of the greeting card business. And at that time, I was doing a kind of traditional greeting card, a folded greeting card. And I launched with 12 cards. We had relative success, but I knew, or I learned rather quickly that in order for this to be a successful business, that I had to have a greater number of art pieces in the shop in order to reach the level of success that I desired. So even with 12, I knew rapidly I needed a lot more cards in order to have winners. And so I kind of let that run through its course. Like I sold out as many of the pieces in that collection as possible. But when I revamped in 2025, I launched with just like a whole lot more cards, because I needed to have the data to know what was working and not working. And so, if I'm remembering correctly, I think I started with like 60 different SKUs of greeting cards. Um, and I tested them at um, art markets in order to see how people responded with
Oh,
what
that's awesome.
cards. And like I just got that data so rapidly. So it was like, I think the first pop up I did was in November of 2025 when I was testing these new products. And you go and make like, maybe $500 at the first pop-up, and then $700 at the second one, and then $900 at the next one. And it's because you're allowing yourself to iterate and change things up. And it's like the following one I make $400, but then it's like, okay, that wasn't the right market with the right people.
Mm.
But it is so easy to iterate when you are out there actually making sales. So that is the number one piece of advice for anyone listening. If you are launching anything, your job is to get the first 10 customers as rapidly as possible. And it doesn't matter what your website looks like, it doesn't matter what your logo looks like. You want to get 10 sales so that you can understand what people want to buy from you, because your business will evolve and shift from that. So, like, the reason why I got into throwing the pop ups was because I knew that when I was doing initially the online sales, it was much harder to get online sales because people didn't know I existed. So it's like, oh,
Yes.
if I throw events, people will be able to interact with me directly, get to know my mission, and then they'll want to buy the thing. And that proved to be true as well.
I find that's going to be a clippable moment. Like this piece of advice you just gave. I think that it's just such a gem. How did you learn that? Do you think that you took that skill set from working as a creative director in corporate, or was this sort of like an A/B testing that you were doing on your own that you learned from year 1 to year 3?
Yeah, I would say it's interesting. I read a lot of business books. I listen to a lot of business podcasts in the past. Not as much right now, but I think one of the kind of meaningful graphic design insights that I have had is that you start with a V1 of something and
Mm.
then you iterate on that. And when I say iterate, if you've never heard that word, it's allowing yourself to make changes to it and make it better. And so then you have a V2, then you have a V3. And so when I'm working with my coaching clients, I'm always like, okay, you're focused on what is probably V5 or V6. And right now, we're just trying to find a minimum viable product, a MVP, the very first draft of something that people are willing to buy. And it doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be glossy. It just needs to exist so you can get the data. And so, to answer your question, I think oftentimes we are afraid of making a messy V1 because we allow ourselves to be overly perfectionist. We focus on being a perfectionist instead of getting the thing done. And like,
Hmm.
no, like do a V1 first.
I love that. I oh, I yeah, I feel like the decision paralysis or the failure to just launch and thinking like ahead of time, that's really what makes us stagnant. So this tip that you're giving of focusing on V1 and then building it from there, I think is just so crucial to launching a business and making it successful. I so thank you so much for sharing that. I want to get into the social media aspect because that's how I found you, was on social media. And for people that don't follow you on TikTok or Instagram, which I hope that they do after this interview, one of the things that really hooked me was the fact that you said that you're building a stationery company bigger than Hallmark. What does that actually look like in your vision?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. Okay, so as you mentioned, my kind of catchphrase on most of my social media is I'm building a stationery company I believe will be bigger than Hallmark. And Hallmark to me obviously is the gold standard of greeting cards in the United States at this time. That is a truth that I cannot ignore. Um Ironically, and this is very funny, right out of undergrad, I actually went to um it was kind of like a portfolio review,
Mm,
and someone from Hallmark reviewed my portfolio and were like, you could be the perfect candidate for a new men's collection that we're trying to start. And so I went through several rounds of interviews but did not get the job, which is wild. Because at the time I was like, it was so funny. I was excited about the job, but I wanted to work in advertising. That was the dream.
yeah.
And it's like I come back to that all these years later. Um, in what I'm building now with SoCurious, my focus is building a card collection that represents as much of the lived experience of all different types of human beings as possible
Yeah.
first, right? And so I'm starting with all of the specific parts of myself that I can reflect, but then from there, I'm going to continue to extend beyond that. So, for example, our first collection is the Everyday Joy collection. So, very much tied to me tapping into my own joy and learning about my inner child, reconnecting with my inner child. The second collection was the Take Care collection, which is the cards that you send to friends when you don't know what to say, but you know they're going through a kind of tough time.
Love that.
So directly connected with my lived experience. Then we did the Heritage Collection, which is focused on Black identity. Um, and then following that, I have coming out soon the LGBT collection. And in addition to that, I did a Heart Eyes collection, which is focused on your non-romantic people that you love in your life, like appreciation cards for the people that you love. And so um, the focus is building as many card collections as possible that reflect all of the different identities that exist in the United States. That's one. The second part, which I'm incredibly excited about, is following another thing that Hallmark has done so beautifully, and this is create their Hallmark channel, the TV network. And so we live in an increasingly digital world, and so I see my TikTok platform as a way to communicate my philosophy around joy publicly. But I think that's only the beginning. I think it's like I have my personal channel at Justin Made That on Instagram, at Justin Shiels on TikTok. And then at SoCurious.co is the kind of business representation. But I have been working on a variety of additional shows that I'll launch on social media and or YouTube in order to continue to share aspects of the brand with the intention of selling products.
That's genius. I love
Thank you.
that. That's so cool. Um, if someone receives one of your cards, what do you hope they feel?
Ooh, I think the first thing I want someone to feel is seen. That is one of the most important aspects of my cards in general. I want them to feel specific enough for you to feel like, I can't believe this random person in Austin, Texas is inside of my head. Like, how did they know this? That's probably, that to me is the highest sign that a card works, like genuinely.
Yeah.
Um, the second thing that I want, and this is an interesting one that I've been thinking through a lot, is my cards are flat greeting cards intentionally. One, because I want people to send cards more frequently. And so I'm able to sell them at a lower price point because they're flat instead of folded greeting cards. But then two, what's beautiful about a flat greeting card is that it's so easy to frame it. And so each
Smart.
individual art piece is not just each individual card is not just a greeting card. It is an art piece that someone can keep in their
Right.
home. And so I've been really focusing in on that when I'm sharing it with people in real life, and even showing them examples of, oh, if you put this 4x6 greeting card in an 8x10 frame, it is a beautiful piece that you can put on your wall. And the gift of, it's not something that you throw in a drawer that
Right.
collects dust. It's something you can see every single day that reminds you of the people that love you.
Oh my gosh, Justin, I'm so inspired by you. I think that you're so cool and you've created such a platform and a brand for yourself that is tapping into all of the ways that technology is changing, that greeting cards are changing, digital world is changing. And I just feel that with through all of the trials and tribulations that you've been through, like it has led you to like you had to go through all of that in order to have this. And I just feel so like grateful to be able to talk to you and that you responded to my DMs. So I'm so, like, thank you so much. And before I let you go, I would love for people to know how they can find you and support your business.
Yeah, I would love for you to visit socurious.co/social. On this site, you will see all of the most important links and sign up for the things that feel the most resonant for you. But one thing I'm really excited about socurious.co/social is right now we have our Joy Reset campaign relaunching. You can sign up at that link, and in this kind of challenge, I'm teaching you how to build your own Joy Reset curriculum. And I feel like this is useful for both entrepreneurs and people who are just ready to reconnect with their joy. I know how heavy the world can be for all of us. And I need you to know that the only way that we are going to survive this unique moment in our collective history is by focusing our attention on building joyful practices that keep us healthy and whole while we are going through this storm.
I love that. Justin, thank you for coming on A Bright Idea. I've loved sharing your story.
Oh, thank you. This has been so much fun, Amber.
Yes. And everyone follow Justin on all social platforms. I will link them in the description. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's episode of A Bright Idea podcast. This week's episode featured Justin Shiels, founder of SoCurious. If you would like to learn more about SoCurious, you can follow the brand on social media at SoCurious.co. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us bring on more stories like Justin's. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at A Bright Idea Podcast for updates. And if there's a topic or a guest you'd like to hear from next, drop us a message. If you would like to support our show directly, you can donate to our Cash App at A Bright Idea Podcast. This episode was edited by Quincy Tucker. Until next time, I'm Amber Key.